Good morning, everybody. All right, how many freshmen are alive today? Let me hear you, freshmen. Or is that not the proper term anymore? How about sophomores? Are you alive? Kind of. How about seniors? There we go. You're ready for the real world. It's awesome to be here. It's awesome to actually be in the place. It's awesome to be in the place where my family actually began. My wife and I moved here and started our family. We lived in Alpharetta for about 9 years. We also started the Radiance Foundation here. And we started the Radiance Foundation because we wanted to tackle the tough stuff. How many of you guys know that there's a war on common sense all around us right now, right? And so we wanted to create something that actually tackles a lot of these tough issues. So we created the Radiance Foundation to do three things: to illuminate, educate, and motivate. To illuminate that every human life, whether you're planned or unplanned, whether you're able or disabled, whether you're black, brown, white, whatever beautiful hue of skin you have, every human life is God-given purpose. Then we want to educate people about all these topics, particularly Christians, so that we're not fearful to engage in conversations. You guys know we talk about all kinds of things. You guys are exposed to far more stuff than previous generations, just by nature of social media. And then, of course, we want to motivate people, because what good is your knowledge? What good is what you're learning right now? I'm assuming seniors, you plan on going to college or plan on doing something after this, getting the work world, right? Yes? You didn't waste all these years learning to do nothing with it, correct? So let me just ask by show of hands, how many of you are good at self-motivation? Just by show of hands. Wow, 5 of you? That's depressing. How many of you are good at motivating other people? But see, this is why you guys are here, because HCA exists to equip you to motivate and influence other people. So these are just some of the things. I'm a creative director. My wife was a teacher for 13 years in both public and private school. I worked in the ad agency world, creating all kinds of ad campaigns. We love creating stuff. Some of what we do are these ad campaigns, these billboards. We place 500 billboards around the country. We've actually been sued by organizations like the NAACP that sued us 2 years in federal court, and that was the most surreal experience of my life. They sued a brown guy for exercising one of my most basic civil rights, free speech, and they lost. So that's one of the things that we do. We love creating stuff. You go to radiance.life, you'll see our videos, you'll see the graphics, infographics, the weekly op-eds that we write, because we are passionate about factivism. Factivism is very different than activism, because activists, and we all, are led by emotions, but we have to make sure that we have the emotional and the evidential. As Christians, we need to bring context to issues. And when we have the context, when we actually know what's going on, we bring clarity to things. And then when you have clarity, you can act responsibly. That's why we consider ourselves factivists. These are some of the tools. We also have these books, like Pro-Life Kids, that teach young children. These are children's books. The first 3 are children's books, teaching kids an age-appropriate pro-life worldview. And then it's crazy that in 2024 that we actually have to have books that say he is he and she is she. But this is the world that we're living in, where supposedly men can get pregnant. Yay! That's not the case. Not equal, civil rights gone wrong. That book was born out of our lawsuit with the NAACP. And so these are just some of the tools that we create through the Radiance Foundation. Look, we are here in this world not to just muddle through it. We're here to love and serve others. And with all the issues that you guys face and all the pressures you guys face on things that can be very confusing, that's why it's very important that we have a biblical worldview on things. This is what I love to say all the time. We are called to love every human being, not every human doing. See, when we get this wrong, there are disastrous consequences. But when we get it right, people flourish. And so this is why we're committed. 1 Corinthians 13:6 says, love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. And I know we have a culture that sometimes is so averse to hearing the truth and knowing the truth, but we have to speak it in love, but we have to speak it. See, that's part of the problem. So many times the world's out there screaming a lie, and we're just silent. especially as Christians, when we are the ones who know the truth. And so I just want to encourage you to be bold, to be willing to engage in those tough conversations, but approach it with love. And of course, I also believe a dash of sarcasm helps too. Anyway, I want to talk about the issue of abortion throughout this presentation. So I just want to say this. We serve a God of wholeness and healing. There may be someone in this room who has had an abortion. We all make mistakes in our lives, and they all have different consequences, but God heals, God forgives. And if it's not somebody here, if it's somebody that you know, there are what are called post-abortion healing resources. If you go to Radiance Foundation's website /heal, there are great resources for women and men, because there are men who feel the regret and the remorse of forcing, for instance, a girlfriend to have an abortion. But we just believe in healing. I just need you to know that there are resources for those who may have gone through that or somebody that you know. So when we talk about the beauty of possibility, I love talking about this. And through this presentation, I'm going to give you 5 main myths that I'm going to just debunk. There are many more than just 5, but we only have a limited time. But I love talking about the beauty of possibility. In our family, we have planned, unplanned, we have able and disabled, and there are so many who tell us that certain ones of us don't deserve to live. In fact, I remember speaking at Harvard. I was in a debate with a professor, and she continually told me that I didn't have the right to live, that I should have been aborted. You'll find out a little more later. I just can't imagine telling another human being that. But yet, someone had the audacity to say that because she didn't believe that my origin story gave me the right to live. So this is one of the myths I want to debunk. Unplanned equals unwanted equals unloved.
Life is never picture perfect. Human beings come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and abilities. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we think we're prepared, the unplanned happens all the time. It's how we respond to the unexpected that shows our true humanity. But many do not see the value of every human life. Too many are willing to discard those who don't fit the picture of perfection. Abortion destroys the chance to love and to be loved. We never know what will fill the frames of our lives or how empty those frames can be when we allow exceptions.
Every life is a gift.
My family is full of exceptions stories, but I have to kind of go back a little further. This is actually the first version of our family. They're my parents, Andrew and Henry Bomberger, and the first 3 kids in the family, they're biologically related kids. Their first 3 kiddos, I call them the homemade ones, and so they are the first ones. I was the first one adopted, and you can look at this picture and wonder, well, what motivated them to adopt? What motivated them to adopt was actually my mom's own brokenness. Growing up in an impoverished situation, she had an alcoholic father who was emotionally and psychologically abusive, and so for 1 year's time, at the age of 5, my mom was placed in a children's home. And so during that time, she got a heart for those who didn't have a mother and a father. At least her mom and her dad visited her separately, but she noticed that there's another little girl there with physical disabilities. No one came to see her. No one came to hug her. No one came to spend time with her at all. And that broke a 5-year-old's heart. So that's when she remembers getting down on her knees and just asked God to help her be a mommy to those who didn't have one. And so she met the most amazing man that I've ever known, my dad, who shared the same heart, because if you're going to adopt 10 kids, you kind of have to be on the same wavelength, just saying. So this is the first day my mom held me. I was 6 weeks old. And this moment came with a lot of sacrifice. I talk about the beauty of possibility, and within the beauty of possibility, there is the beauty of sacrifice. See, but not the way the world sees sacrifice. See, the world is all about sacrificing other people so you can get what you need, right? But it's the beauty of self-sacrifice. My mom, who still had a connection with her father and still tried to love him throughout her adult life, he was involved with the original 5 Bombergers. But the moment they talked about adopting me, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a slightly different hue of skin than my mom, my dad. The moment they talked about adopting me, he said to them, He used different words, but just imagine what he said. If you bring that black child into your home, you're going to ruin your family. And so my mom had to make a decision, and a very painful one. And this is the beauty of self-sacrifice. She had to lose a father in order to gain a son. So the moment that they adopted me, he had nothing to do with our family the rest of our lives. He's the one who missed out. He missed out on 13 awesome grandchildren who could have loved him, and he could have loved us, but they chose well because they chose me, so thanks, Mom and Dad. So my dad, Henry Bomberger, the reason why I love being a husband, the reason why I love being a father, because I had a father who loved Jesus, a father who loved children who weren't biologically his, but he loved those that other men abandoned. So this man, in fact, he's really, I say he's the most amazing man that I've ever known. He was the same man at home as he was outside of the home. I lost my dad during the height of COVID, which was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. Some of you may have lost loved ones during COVID. Definitely not my favorite time in life. COVID was an insane period in everyone's life. But to lose my father left behind an incredible legacy of love. Because he loved Jesus, that natural outflow is loving people. And he loved us all. This is actually when we were a small family of 8. And you can see here, it's an old newspaper article. I'm the one with the checkered collar. I was a handful. Are any of you guys a handful for your parents? Oh, you're like smiling about it too. Some of us are a handful. I mean, it's okay because you can channel that stuff, whether it's like being strong-willed, bullheaded, that can be channeled towards something really constructive in the kingdom, I'm just saying. But you can see the title here. It says, Unwanted Children Find Their Wanted. My parents shattered this myth of the unwanted child because that entire myth is the DNA of the abortion industry. That if you're going to be unwanted, you're going to be unloved. And the other thing that we learned in this family, you can see we're obviously not all the same. We don't look the same. We're white, we're black, we're Native American, Vietnamese, able, disabled. But one of the most powerful lessons I learned growing up in a family like this is that we are one human race. Can I get an amen in here? We are one human race. It's not a call to be colorblind. Be colorful. But God didn't create color for us to separate ourselves by it. He created color for us to enjoy and to celebrate. And we celebrated color in our family. Here's a photo of all of my siblings, all 13. It's almost like even the white kids in the family had afros. Anyway, so this is all of us. As I mentioned, we were different hues, different backgrounds, different personal stories. Some came from incredible neglect and abuse. And it's amazing what God can do. It's amazing how adoption in both the natural and the supernatural brings healing to what was broken. In our family, there was a lot of healing going on. We were adopted. Most of us were adopted as babies. There are those who were adopted as teens who were adopted out of the foster care system. For most of us, my one sister is from Vietnam, and so she's the only international adoption, the only one that wasn't out of foster care. But this is a picture of what it looks like when you know that God puts a calling on your heart, even if you're 5 years old. But you know that God's put a calling on your heart, and you live it out no matter what people say. There were so many people who told my parents, how are you going to deal with kids who are disabled? Why would you want to make life so hard for yourself? We're not here to live our best life. I know we hear that all the time. We're here to live a life that serves and worships God. And what does that look like? It takes on different forms. But we're here to love and serve others. And I thank God my parents had that mindset that when people told them, well, how are you going to adopt somebody who is not the same color as you? I didn't realize you had to be the same color to love somebody. So I'm so glad my parents didn't listen to the naysayers. Didn't listen to people who said, well, wait a minute, that child's black, that child's brown, that child's Asian. So what? I'm going to love that child the same as I'm going to love the child that is my biological child. And quite honestly, I was the favorite one in the family anyway, so I don't care. I want to show you a picture of what supposedly unwanted looks like. So when you hear that phrase unwanted, the reason why you have a culture that loves to brand people as unwanted, because then it can justify anything it wants to do to them. It's how you dehumanize. It's how you justify violence against a group of people, like the unborn. Let me show you a picture of what supposedly unwanted looks like. This is just my whole family. My brothers, my sisters, their spouses, and all their children all gathered in one place. And there's one grandma in the middle of the picture who just turned 100 back in May. Yeah, she is crazy. And she's still trying to wrestle. I don't even understand. This lady is, her name is Betty Bose, and she is a trip. But she's the only extended family member in this picture. But this is what supposedly unwanted looks like. So this is all of us, 64 strong. And what's crazy is that this picture is actually much smaller than it would be today because it was taken 9 years ago. So there are 22 more lives added to our family through new marriages, new births, and new adoptions. When I talked about the legacy my dad left behind, he left a legacy of faith and love. I have nieces and nephews who are now adoptive parents. See, this is what happens when you don't listen to the world's discouragement and you go for what you know God's called you to do. This picture is possible too because of birth parents, particularly birth moms, who chose to be stronger than abortion, stronger than their circumstances, like my birth mom. I tried to figure out how do I thank someone who went through 9 months of a traumatic pregnancy? What do I even say to someone who endured that? So as a creative, I came up with these lyrics, I sang the lyrics, I put together this video that show all the things I've been able to become in my life by the grace of God and her singular decision. See, whether you're a freshman or whatever, what's the terminology? Oh, it is freshman? Okay, you guys aren't woke, so that's good. Whether you're freshman, sophomore, or senior, huh? What did I say? Oh, I forgot juniors. Let me hear from the juniors. I'm so sorry. You are not forgotten. Well, actually, you were forgotten, but you're really not forgotten. But no matter who you are, you were intended to live in this day and this time. And so when I searched for my birth mom, and I never actually found her, there was never any response, I tried to figure out how I can thank her. And so I created this video, as I mentioned, and I figured that maybe some way, somehow, she would see this online. But I really wanted this to kind of show what happens when you make a singular decision. You often don't think about that. You don't think, oh, I'm just doing this and it's not going to have any great impact. Actually, you make a singular decision, it often impacts your forever. It doesn't mean a mistake lasts forever. That's not what I'm talking about. But your decisions have generational impact. And so I figured if I never see my birth mom face to face, that maybe some way, somehow, she will be able to see this tribute from a son who's not only grateful to be alive, but grateful to have the incredible gift of adoption.
You couldn't see what I would be. It wasn't part of your plan. Stronger than your circumstance, you gave my life a chance. Touching the future before it began. You're the reason I am here. I know deep down in my soul, my life has purpose. I know deep down in my soul, my life has purpose.
That's my story. Anytime there are conversations about the issue of abortion, inevitably gets to the question, what about rape? But the circumstances of our conception never change the condition of our worth. I mean, how many in here, by show of hands, how many of you control the circumstances of your conception? I thought you guys would raise your hand in the back. That would be weird. No one controls those things, but yet we pretend that we can be the arbiter of human value based on things that none of us can control. And in this situation, I hope that my whole life I prayed for my birth mom that she got the wholeness and the healing that she needed. And when we have these conversations, we need to talk about who actually needs to be punished, and that's the rapist, of course. But we typically don't hear that part of the conversation from those who push examples like mine, the exceptions cases. The second myth I want to bust here is wantedness equals worth. imagine that policy after you're born, that if you aren't wanted, that your worth is conditional and it goes up or down. No, you have equal and inherent worth because you're created by the God of the universe. And there's no asterisk saying, oh, only if you are this or that. The abortion industry, of course, believes this because they need to, because if you're not wanted, it justifies their violence against you. In fact, their first slogan, if you see here in the third panel, this is a Planned Parenthood brochure, and it says, every child a wanted child. That was their first slogan. Of course, now, that was before they started doing abortions. Now they do over 370,000 abortions a year. And so what do they say? They say abortion is health care. Over and over and over again, abortion is health care. No, it's not health care. It's exploitation. Of course, they also say abortion is love. I mean, when I hear the whole abortion is health care, because it's just a euphemism, if abortion is health care, then slavery was job care. It's amazing what we do with our words, right? Let me play for you just a clip from the founder of Planned Parenthood so you can understand the mentality. This was not altruism. This wasn't out of someone's goodness that Planned Parenthood was created. They wanted to eliminate those they did not feel deserved to live. This is a clip from Margaret Sanger. She's being asked if she believes in sin. This is her response.
Do you believe in sin? When I say believe, I don't mean believe in committing sin. Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin.
Who here was marked when they were born? None of us. But that is the DNA of Planned Parenthood, that some people don't deserve to live. Myth number 3, pregnancy help centers are fake clinics. Pregnancy help centers, there are 3,000 of them across the country. They're the ones who actually help women facing unplanned pregnancies, mothers and fathers who face that, couples who face unplanned pregnancies. They give them free medical care, free material assistance. In fact, every year, $350 million free. Guess what's not free at Planned Parenthood? Anything. But these centers help, and so they get smeared by Planned Parenthood and other pro-abortion activists saying that they are fake clinics. Let me play a clip for you from a politician who's standing in front of a pregnancy center that is medically licensed by the state, that is led by a physician, a medically licensed physician, and this is what he is saying about the only alternative to abortion, the pregnancy centers that actually help women, not just until they give birth, but for typically 2 years after they've given birth to a child, helping support, train them as parents, giving them all kinds of material assistance and connections to resources in their community. But this is what he has to say about the pregnancy center behind him.
But it's actually one of many deceptive brainwashing cult clinics across our state and country known as crisis pregnancy centers. A so-called crisis pregnancy center poses as a healthcare clinic with doctors and nurses, but you actually won't find any healthcare professionals behind those doors. We need to do everything we can to shut down these brainwashing cult clinics, and they are brainwashing cult clinics.
Who's brainwashed here? Of course, they're staffed with medical professionals. They wouldn't be licensed by the state if they weren't. This is the kind of stuff that goes on. So if you're pro-choice, I'm putting that in quotes, then why are you demonizing the choice for someone who decides not to have an abortion? And they're literally, this particular congressman is trying to actually shut down these resources all across the country. This is part of what they do. The free medical support, they provide, some of them provide prenatal care, actually more of them provide prenatal care than Planned Parenthood, by the way. And they also have these things called baby boutiques and mama boutiques. There are 3,000 pregnancy centers across the country. Thousands of them have this, a baby boutique, a mama boutique, where they are able to get all of these materials, diapers, formula, clothes, books, toys, furniture, maternity clothing, for free. You won't find one of these ever inside of an abortion mill. Why is that? Because if a woman doesn't choose abortion, the abortion mill is not supporting her. This is why we need our pregnancy centers and why I debunk that myth that pregnancy centers are fake clinics. Myth number 4, abortion empowers women. We hear that all the time. But what is empowerment? It empowers Planned Parenthood. It empowers abortionists to become extremely wealthy. In states where it's legal for any where abortion is legal for any reason up until birth, it empowers guys to have zero responsibility. How does it empower a woman? Abortion is big business. In fact, Planned Parenthood is a $2 billion business. This is why it's important for us to understand the difference between being empowered and being fooled by those with power. What does true empowerment mean? Ephesians 4:14 says this, "Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth." And that's what this abortion empowers women is. In fact, you've got the same organization that's saying it empowers women that's saying that virginity is a social construct. That's interesting. And they say that it's from the patriarchy. But think about this. Why would the patriarchy say be a virgin? I thought the patriarchy is always exploiting women. So why would the patriarchy say, hey, be abstinent? Which is actually a great thing, which is actually a biblical thing. Trust me, it's like drama-free. It's hormone-free, it's abortion-free, it's drama-free. But this is the interesting thing. It says this patriarchal way of thinking harms everyone. So virginity harms everyone. How many people have died from virginity? Okay, maybe some people have emotionally died for the moment, but how many people have died from virginity? How many? Give me a number. 0. How many people have died from abortion? Since Roe v. Wade, 65 million. This is why when we talk about the abortion empowers women, look who's trying to sell you abortion. This video is about fake feminism and how Planned Parenthood is constantly lying to not just women, but to men. You'll hear some of the clips from Planned Parenthood presidents talking about, women used to die thousands, every year before Roe, which is a complete lie. Even the Washington Post gave them 4 Pinocchios. But this is why I love to illuminate fake feminism. My 11-year-old Aaliyah, my daughter Aaliyah, is singing in this because I want my girls to understand what it means to be truly empowered. And that's to understand who you are in Christ first and foremost. And to understand that you are beautifully and biologically different as women. We, men and women, we are equal, but we are not the same.
They love to tell ya abortion's so good for ya. Just pay a fee and get equality. Their fraud's extensive, their lies defenseless. Planned Parenthood's been conning for a century. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. They don't want you to know. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. All they want is your dough.
This is basic health care.
Thousands of women died before Roe every year.
We're not political. Planned Parenthood, we're nonpartisan.
Planned Parenthood is
fake feminism. Fake feminism. Fake feminism. They don't want you to know. It's fake feminism. Fake feminism. Fake feminism. All they want is your dough.
Hopefully you'll sing that jingle throughout the day. I don't have enough time to get into this, but what we do as factivists, we bring context. People will say, well, Planned Parenthood abortion is only 3% of their services, which is not true. It brings in over 87% of all of their health services revenue. It's the reason why they are $2 billion a year business. But every other major medical service to women has been plummeting for years, for well over a decade. And you as a woman and as a guy, you need to ask yourself, well, why is that? Why is every major medical service plummeting at Planned Parenthood? Because there's one service that brings in their money. That's abortion. You can see here, breast cancer exams plummeted, Pap tests plummeted, prenatal care, which barely exists at all at Planned Parenthood, plummeted. Why doesn't mainstream media ask these questions of an organization that claims to be the leading women's healthcare provider? And the truth is because they're constantly telling women, you can't do this, you can't face the unplanned. Of course we can. As women and men, we can face any circumstance. Philippians 4:13 says what? I can do what? Some things through Christ who strengthens. No, I can do what? All things. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Let me give you a few examples of situations where people say, well, that child shouldn't have to grow up in that circumstance because it'll just be hard, and it'd be better if they weren't alive. No one is better off dead. We're all better off loved. And so let me give you just 2 examples. This little guy was adopted as a baby. His birth mom was in a difficult situation. When he grew up, he wanted to say to her face, just meet her and say, "Thank you that I didn't end up as an abortion." This guy created some of the most innovative devices. In fact, many of you have them. Anybody have an iPhone? Steve Jobs, founder of Apple. And look at it's almost like the baby picture. It was almost like God knew. He's like holding up look at that. This is what's crazy is that, and it's not our accomplishments that give us value and worth. We have equal inherent worth simply because we exist. But let me give you one other example. This little girl had a very rough beginning, ended up going into foster care, adopted by her grandparents, she and her sister. She was adopted and loved and became what? The world's most decorated gymnast. And here's the thing, when I talk about the beauty of possibility, she is the tangible example of the beauty of possibility, and yet she announced on Instagram 2 years ago that she's pro-abortion, saying that adoption's expensive and that no one should have to face trauma. Yeah, I wish no one did have to face trauma. We can't avoid trauma. As Christians, we try to reduce it, but that's not a reason to end the life of an unborn child. Imagine the world without Simone Biles. Let me debunk the 5th myth, because this is very personal in our family. An unplanned pregnancy is the end of your life. It may feel like it, but it's not. My wife knows all about this because she found herself in her late 20s as a teacher, single, in a terrible relationship. She found herself pregnant after she walked away from a toxic relationship. And she went in for an ultrasound by herself, and she felt like God was wrapping his heart around her heart and her heart around her baby's heart as she saw in the ultrasound. This is a later ultrasound than that one. It's much later. But it was on Valentine's Day, so it made it even more significant for her because she saw this little blinking piece. It looked like a blinking piece of rice. And it was her baby's heartbeat. And she knew at that moment she could no longer live for herself. And so when she went home that night, she looked at her journal. And in her journal, on the margin, the verse Psalm 34, 4 and 5, and it says, "And I sought the Lord, and he relieved me of all my fears, that those who look to him are radiant, they are never covered with shame." And so that baby girl beautifully and radically changed my wife's life. Her fellow teacher would say, just abort it, just abort it. The biological father didn't want anything to do with her, especially when he found out that it was a girl. She never considered abortion, but the pressure on her was so intense. But this video is not only a story of how my wife chose to be stronger than her circumstances, not only about that baby girl who ended up becoming my daughter, but about the reason for the name of our organization, how God redeems all things. That is my baby girl, and she is a sophomore now at Liberty University, studying to be a teacher like her mama. And I just want to remind you guys, the beauty of possibility is that life has purpose. No matter what your current struggle is, no matter what may come in the future, life has God-given purpose. And that applies to every single one of you. I just thank God for my incredible wife, who's now, people told her, well, you're never going to be able to be a professional anymore because what are you going to do? This pregnancy is going to end your life. She's now the executive director and co-founder of the Radiance Foundation, an international organization, takes us around the world 60 times a year. So I have just a few minutes to quick touch on a few questions. I'm sorry that I wish we had like an hour to do questions. I just want to address some of the questions. Somebody asks, what does the Bible say about life? Who gave us life? God. In the beginning, right? He breathed life into Adam. Psalm 139 says, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. There are so many instances about, like even John and Jesus in the womb, they leapt for joy, right? When their mothers came close together. I mean, God created every one of us. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. God is the author of life. He's the only one who can take life. Proverbs 6:16 through 19 says this, and this is about just the six things that the Lord hates, and then 7 that he finds detestable. And one of those listed is the shedding of innocent blood. So when we talk about how does the Bible regard abortion, how does it even address this? Right there, it says, Proverbs 6:16 through 19, very specifically the shedding of innocent blood. That's what abortion is all the time. We got so many questions. I mean, you guys wrote a lot of great questions on racism. Why is racism such a problem in our country? Racism is a problem because humans exist. It's not a unique situation. Humanity is always falling short of God's design, right? In Acts 17:26, it says God created what? Created us from one blood. We're one human race. The whole creation of different races was actually created by a scientist who was separating people by people groups, and there was nothing scientific about it at all. And yet we still actually cling to this archaic sort of sense that we are different races. We aren't. Racism is a problem because some of us invite the evil racism in our hearts. And no people group has a monopoly on racism, by the way. I don't care what color of skin you are. Anyone can be a racist. And the point is that anyone can sin. And the beautiful part of that is that God can redeem and transform. I remember I was at a meeting with someone who was a member of the KKK and then a neo-Nazi, and his best friend was black because God got a hold of his heart and changed his heart. But racism is evil. It's a sin. There's no excuse for it wherever it exists. But we as Christians should never entertain it and never take like the Ibram X. Kendis of the world who tell you that it's okay, like present discrimination is the way that you fight past discrimination, and future discrimination is the way you fight future discrimination. That's racist. That's prejudice. That's not how we fight it. The way that we fight it is looking through instead of the broken lens of the world, the broken lens of race, the broken lens of gender, the broken lens of socioeconomic status, we look through the breakthrough filter of Christ. Amen? Is having sex a good or a bad thing? That's the last one I'll leave you on. Is it a good or a bad thing? Well, God created sex, so it's an awesome thing. And just as with everything within God's design, that there is a time and a place, and in Genesis he talked about that within the construct of marriage between a man and a woman, and yes, it's a great thing, but what happens when it's outside of God's design? You've got the unplanned pregnancies, you've got STDs, we have epidemics of gonorrhea and chlamydia. I mean, when we fall outside of God's design, things do fall apart. But guess what? As I mentioned, God is a God who redeems. So for those, sex is when you say a bad thing, it's just bad to be outside of God's will. It's a bad thing to be outside of his design because you can't flourish the same way. So with that, just understanding that God is a God who is intimately involved in every thought that goes through your head, and he loves you. He loves you through your struggles. Just remember that Philippians 4:13, that you can do all things, that if you've made mistakes in your life, that's not the end of it. And guys, I just want a special call to you right now, because this whole culture that's pushing abortion on women, it's not just a woman's issue. It's a you issue, guys. We need guys of integrity and character. Can I get an amen? Who say that I'm worth more, that she's worth more, and that we're both worth waiting for. And that matters. Let's just pray. Jesus, we thank you that you are the God of infinite possibilities, God, you take our impossibles in all of our life and you make them possible. Thank you for every soul in this room, for all the freshmen, the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors. God, we thank you that you love us, that you care about. In fact, in Psalm 139, it says, how vast are your thoughts of me, O God. If I were to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. God, you care about us and you love us. Thank you for emblazoning our hearts and our lives with this incredible possibility. May each young man and young woman in here pursue the destiny that they were born to pursue. We thank you and we love you, Jesus. Amen.